Carmelo Anthony has gotten a lot of disrespect recently. At the same time, a lot of these criticisms make sense. For the majority of his career, he's never really been a great defender or a willing passer, and he's kind of a black hole, because if he's not scoring at a decent rate, then he doesn't provide anything else. Those criticisms are fair. However, in my opinion, he is not overrated by any means. Because, well, how can someone be overrated if everybody right now thinks he sucks? That doesn't really make sense. You can't be overrated if everyone thinks you suck. How's it going, fellas? My name's Andy, and today we're gonna talk about Carmelo Anthony, his time in OKC, his prime, his career, everything. And I wanna address some misconceptions that a lot of fans have about him. First, we have to take a look at his time with the Thunder, where most of his criticisms were at an all-time high. Now, first, I'm gonna say this, he usually didn't play well. As the third option, many were expecting him to be more efficient than what he actually was. Like, they were expecting Olympic Melo to come out, but that never happened. Despite having more open shots than any other season of his career, he still struggled to hit those shots. And when OKC tried to ISO Melo, it worked sometimes, but most of the time it didn't. And in the playoffs against the Jazz, he was pretty bad all around. With that being said though, out of all the 5-man lineups that played over 100 minutes together, Melo was still in 3 of the top 4 lineups. And as bad as he was defensively, he was still on the team's top defensive lineup. So it's not like he hurt them that much, he could still guard the post. They were a top 3 defensive team before Robertson got injured. Another thing is that it's hard for a player like Melo to adapt. Throughout his entire career, he's been a rhythm player. He needs to touch the ball to get into a rhythm. In most seasons, he's had a usage rate of over 30%, but that dropped to 23% in OKC. That's a big drop, and even though Melo's not good enough to have that high of a usage anymore, it's still reasonable why he struggled in his new role. Next, let's take a look at his career as a whole. Since getting drafted in 2003, he's been a 10-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA, and won the scoring title in 2013. That's a really good resume. He has almost the same number for All-Stars and All-NBAs as Patrick Ewing, same number of All-Stars as David Robinson and John Stockton, who played for 18 years. He has the same number of All-Star appearances and even more All-NBAs than Clyde Drexler. These are some all-time greats from the 90s. Now, you might be thinking, but it's the 1990s. It was a much tougher era. The guys were competing with MJ and there were so many great big men or whatever. But Melo's competition was really tough too. He entered the NBA when guys like KG, Dirk, Tim Duncan, they were all in their primes. And the All-NBA teams are not separated by small forward or power forward either, so Melo was always competing with some of the best power forwards in NBA history. Plus, there was also LeBron who he was competing with as well. That's the main reason why Melo never made first-team All-NBA, because all those forwards were simply better than him. It still shouldn't take away from how great a player is though. You could say that Melo might have not deserved his last couple of All-Star selections with the Knicks cause their record was horrible, but he was still an All-Star level player regardless. So, was his career really overrated? I don't think so. If anything, it's been underrated. And that leads to my next topic, the LeBron comparison. Melo, throughout his entire NBA career and even back in high school, him and LeBron have always been compared to each other. For the majority of their careers, you couldn't have a conversation about Melo without bringing up LeBron. LeBron was the high school prodigy, but Melo had arguably the greatest college season ever for a freshman, leading Syracuse to the NCAA championship. And after their rookie seasons were done, there was a real argument that Melo could have won Rookie of the Year over LeBron. He shot the ball better, he had better advanced stats, and he led the Nuggets to the playoffs in the Western Conference. At that time, they were seen as, at the very least, equals. But over the years, as LeBron became an all-time great, one of the best all-around players the NBA has ever seen, Melo remained as just a scorer. In his prime though, he was great at scoring. Up until around 2013-ish, Melo was arguably a better overall scorer than LeBron. Statistically, he was a better mid-range shooter and a three-point shooter with better percentages and a higher volume. While LeBron, on the other hand, his jump shot was still kinda iffy. In the playoffs, teams would sometimes leave him wide open, daring him to shoot. This went on for basically the first 10 years of his career. Although LeBron's scoring numbers and overall efficiency is better than Melo's, he was a lot less versatile, and that was a huge disadvantage that he would eventually fix. So why does this LeBron vs Melo comparison matter? Well, it's because everyone holds Melo to unrealistic standards. Because they've been compared all the time, it makes Melo's career look worse than it actually is. Nobody thinks he's actually better than LeBron, but when we judge him, we subconsciously compare his career to LeBron's, just because they were counterparts for so long. And as LeBron developed into a legend and won championships, Melo has only made the conference finals once in his entire career. I don't think this is fair to Melo because they've played in different conferences, and when we look at him individually, he's been just as good as some other all-time greats who get a lot more respect than he does. Another thing I want to quickly talk about is his playoff record. As of this video, he has one of the worst winning percentages in NBA history. In 72 career playoff games, he is 25-47. During his early days in Denver, he had 5 straight first-round exits, and in all 5 of those series, his team never won more than 1 game. Yikes. That sounds pretty bad, but to put it into a better perspective, the Western Conference was brutal. His team was winning 45 to 50 games, but he was regularly facing the Spurs or Lakers in the first round. That Western Conference during the mid to late 2000s, it was crazy. Later in his career with the New York Knicks, I think Melo deserves the most criticism for this part of his career. First, he forced a trade to the Knicks and they basically had to blow up their entire team to get him, when he could have just waited until the summer to sign as a free agent. Now, he did have his best individual season in 2012-13, where he finished 3rd in the MVP race. It was a great season, but that team was so old. They had the oldest roster in the entire league, so there was no continuity. After that season, everybody just got worse and he could not lead the Knicks back into the playoffs again. At the same time, he was still a great teammate even when they were losing. Porzingis has said a lot of great things about Melo. Quote, "He's been a great example for me. I've been blessed to be able to work with him day to day, learn from him, talk to him, be friends with him. Obviously, it would be really tough for us to lose him." Melo actually started to open up his game too. In 2015-16, the Knicks were struggling, but Melo averaged a career high in assists with 4.2. And I know 4.2 per game isn't a lot, but he was still showing his willingness to pass the ball and help the young guys get better. Also, one more thing that gets overlooked, Melo doesn't flop. He just doesn't flop. Well, except for this one time, but that's not flopping. He was just taking a nap, and I think he got hit on the head. But yeah, Melo doesn't flop. During his prime, he was one of the most physical players in the league, and it would have been easy for him to get extra points on the foul line if he exaggerated the contact, but he never did that. He never averaged more than 9 free throw attempts per game in any season, but if he tried to flop like a lot of other scorers today, he'd shoot at least 11 or 12 per game. Like, look at this highlight for example. He gets fouled like 3 times in this clip, but since he doesn't exaggerate the contact, he never gets the call. And that's basically it. I wanted to make this video because I feel like Melo over the years has gotten a lot of unnecessary flack. Honestly, at this point, I feel like he's more underrated than he is overrated. Everyone talks about how much he sucks and how he's not a complete player, but he was still phenomenal back in the day. Hall of Famer without a doubt. I hope he has a great season with Houston. Anyway, that's all folks. Let me know your thoughts on Melo. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.